What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Hope you're all having a wonderful day. Today we'll be talking about the crisis that's currently unfolding in Afghanistan right now. Now, if you don't remember, the Biden administration chose to withdraw troops from Afghanistan in May. That's something that the Trump administration was actually planning to do as well. And it was a decision that Biden was lambasted for by both sides of the political aisle, saying that the Taliban would come and wreak havoc on the country once the American troops left. And it turns out that's exactly what's happening right now. It says here, across Afghanistan, a mass exodus is unfolding as the Taliban press on in their brutal military campaign, which has captured more than half of the country's 400-odd districts, according to some assessments. And with that, fears of harsh return to extremist rule or bloody civil war between ethnically aligned militias have taken hold. So far this year, around 330,000 Afghans have been displaced, more than half of them fleeing their homes since the United States began its withdrawal in May, according to the United Nations. And they go on to say that since the Taliban intensified their offensive in early May, the United Nations said in a report released on Monday, nearly 2,400 civilians have been killed or injured, as many as in the preceding 4 months. The total, the UN said, was the highest record for the May to June period since monitoring began in 2009. So in case y'all missed that, May to June is just 2 months apart, like they're back to back. So it's just a 2-month period. Having 2,400 civilians killed or injured in that time frame is kind of insane. It's kind of a high number, I would believe. And they juxtapose that next to the previous 4 months, which is less than half, which I would still think is pretty significant living in the United States. Like, we would not have nothing like that going around here. Having militants kill, what would that be, 1,200 people in 4 months? That would never fly in the United States. And as a result of this, they say many have flooded into makeshift tank camps or crowded into relatives' homes and cities. The last islands of government control in many provinces. Thousands more are trying to secure passports and visas to leave the country altogether. Others have crammed into smugglers' pickup trucks to a desperate bid to slip illegally over the border. In recent weeks, the number of Afghans crossing the border illegally shot up around 30 to 40% compared to the period before the international troops began withdrawing in May, according to the International Organization for Migration. At least 30,000 people are now fleeing every week. So let's just take a second and break that down, because when they say 30,000 people are now fleeing every week, they predicated that with the statement of it increased around 30 to 40%. So that means even before this, illegal migration out of the country of Afghanistan was at least 20,000, right? It was about 20,000, maybe not at least, but about 20,000. So that's kind of insane to me that they have that many people fleeing, not trying to get in, trying to get out because of the Taliban and civil unrest that's just taken over the country there. But sadly, these immigrants don't have anywhere to go, it sounds like, because they say now the country is at the precipice of another bloody chapter, but the new outpouring of Afghans comes as attitudes towards migrants have hardened around the world. After forging a repatriation deal in 2016 to stem migration from war-afflicted countries, Europe has deported tens of thousands of African migrants. Hundreds of thousands more are being forced back by Turkey as well as by neighboring Pakistan and Iran, which together host around 90% of displaced Afghans worldwide and have deported a record number of Afghans in recent years. So these Afghans are fleeing the country in fear for their lives, and once they get out of the country, they're sent back. Many of them are sent back. As I said, Europe has deported tens of thousands of them. And the journey to get out of the country is not an easy one. They say those who can afford it pay thousands of dollars to travel to Turkey and then Europe, but many more strike pay-as-you-go deals with smugglers planning to work illegally in Iran until they can afford the next leg of the journey. So these immigrants, refugees, are having to work for these, I guess, coyotes, smugglers. And if they're anything like the ones from the Mexico to American border, they are not very good people. I mean, these guys probably have them working in deplorable conditions, like poor pay, just slave labor, essentially. That's terrible that these guys are subjecting themselves to that willingly to get out of the country. That just tells you how dangerous it is right there. And it's compounded by the fact that these guys don't have anywhere to live. Like, hundreds of thousands of them are being displaced from their homes, and 100,000 just this in the last May to June period, so in the last couple of months. And as a result of that, they're having to cram themselves into houses. And here's an anecdote from Mohab Nabi Mohammed, who's a 40-year-old who borrowed $1,000 to bring 36 relatives to Kabul after the Taliban attacked his village. So he has 36 people crammed into his house. It's a 3-bedroom apartment. So it is a tiny, it's not a mansion, it's a tiny little house that he's cramming his entire family in because they have nowhere else to go. Their houses have been destroyed, or the Taliban is right next door. Like, this is, and it's kind of crazy because they're telling stories about people going to bed and waking up hearing gunshots. It's kind of like, you know, you hear the stories about the gang shootings in the neighborhoods, like in the ghettos. That's what they're living through. Here's another anecdote. Mr. Adib fled his home in Kuala Na in the country's northwest in early July after the Taliban laid siege to the city one night. As dawn broke, he says the paw-paw-paw of gunfire was replaced with the wails from neighbors. Electricity lines littered the ground. Doors of houses were broken down. The road was stained with blood. It's just appalling. It's just appalling. The violence that's taking place over there right now, it's egregious. The human rights violations, egregious. And it just gets worse from here. So, Atullah Afghan, the head of the Provincial Council in Helmand, said the Afghan Air Force had bombed a private hospital in the city after the Taliban took shelter there, killing a civilian and wounding 2 others. Several Taliban fighters were also killed in the strike, he said. So this is the Afghan, like the country now, fighting against the Taliban. So they've resorted to bombing hospitals to kill these guys. If that doesn't show you or tell you how bad these guys are, the Taliban, I don't know what will. It's that they're going to such great lengths as to bomb a hospital. They're living in a dystopia over there. That's literally what it is, a dystopia. It's terrible, and something needs to be done, whether it's sending our troops back or something else, because people shouldn't be forced to live like this. It shouldn't happen. So whether it's the UN, the United States, or another country coming in, stepping in, and repelling the Taliban, or maybe some other diplomatic way of resolving this conflict, but whatever method is decided on, it just needs to happen fast because these people are suffering. And it is nauseating to me to have to read this and know that it's happening and not see anything being discussed on how to fix it. And I'm not saying it's going to be an easy task. I'm sure it's a Herculean task, a Herculean problem to solve, but I just haven't seen the news coverage that this problem deserves, and I haven't really heard any or seen anyone discussing this in any real meaningful ways about how to resolve this problem. So I'm just trying to do my part and raise as much awareness for this as I can. But with that being said, guys, that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I really do sincerely hope something gets done here. And with that, I'll see you in the next one.